Hi guys, welcome back to SwitchUp. I'm Mark Walker and I am joined by, you'd never guess who, it's Glen Bolger.
Hello everyone, yep, it's nice to be back together again. Right, today's list then we've got for you is going to cover some of our favourite ARPGs on the Switch. Now we're going to start with some of the more, I don't know what, traditional, for want of a better phrase, ARPGs in terms of possibly being top down, obviously having that character growth system, leveling, whatever you want to call it, and then we'll move on to games that are a bit more maybe open world in nature.
Nice one. Yeah, good to be back. What are the best ARPGs on Switch? Let's find out. First up then, we've got the Mana series, which, or is it Mana or Mana?
I'd say Mana, but maybe that's the English side of me coming out, I don't know. But yeah, we say the series because there are a few different options available on the Switch these days. You have the Collection of Mana, which is the first game on the Game Boy, which I think was classed as a Final Fantasy game actually in some regions when it came out. You have Secret of Mana, which is a very well-loved Super Nintendo game, and then you had Seiken Densetsu 3, which was obviously the third game in the series, but was only released in Japan back in the day. Then you've got Trials of Mana, which is a remake of that third game and is fantastic. I think that made our best games of 2020 list, I'm pretty sure it did. And you have a remaster of The Legend of Mana, which is a very different game in some respects. Doesn't tell a full story, it's like a collection of side stories, very different to the other games, but very good at the same time. All of those games are fantastic options.
Yeah, all I heard there was Glen flexing his Japanese pronunciation skills. Nice one, mate. Next up then, we've got the much loved E series. I'll talk a bit about 9 and Glen can mention 8, but recently we reviewed 9 on the channel. It's E's 9 Monstrum Nox, and the Monstrum are essentially, for want of a better word, like superheroes. They get these different abilities. You still play as Adol Kristin, but you have to travel to the Monstrum world and try and keep those creatures at bay, almost like a tower defense action RPG in some ways. I really enjoyed it, but my goodness, the Switch version has some performance issues. It didn't take away from what a good game it was. It still feels very similar to the first, I say the first, to 8, which you absolutely loved, didn't you, Glen?
Yeah, I don't think it would be a stretch to say that Ys 8 is one of my favourite Switch games. I'm very much a fan of ARPGs actually, much more than turn-based RPGs these days, maybe just because life becomes very hectic, you know, as you get older. And these two are fantastic versions of that. They have the traditional tropes of character progression, levelling up, obviously that more action-based combat as well. Ys 8, I love the setting, being on that desert island and having to find the other members of your original voyage. For me, that really sold it, that setting. And
interestingly, Ys 8 is actually set after Ys 9, so that's why we did them in that order. It totally wasn't coincidence. Also, I covered Ys Origins on the channel, which is a little bit more traditional in terms of its perspective, but again has a lot of the ARPG elements. I thought it was a really good game, and it very often goes on quite a deep sail. Next up then, we've got Xenoblade 1 and 2, which are also on the Switch, with Xenoblade 1 coming out after Xenoblade 2.
Yeah, I've not played much of 2, I've got to be honest, maybe a couple of hours, but I have played and completed the first game, which is absolutely fantastic. Again, obviously has that bigger world to explore. It has the more action-oriented combat, whereas this time, if memory serves me, you kind of have cooldown periods, don't you, on your weapons and your moves that you can use. But what I liked about the first game, was the character building. I really liked the main characters and their little journey that they went on and how much you cared for them by the end. Very good game.
Yeah, personally, I thought the combat was incredible, because originally I played a little bit and I actually had to go back to the start of the game because there's quite a bit of tutorial that if you miss it, you never quite get how the combat system works. So I went back and it was incredible. So yeah, brilliant games, and certainly should be in most Switch players' lists, I'd say.
Right, next up then we have Diablo 3. I'm going to pass over to Mark for this one because I know you've played a good old chunk of this.
Yeah, I played this back on PC, back when I was like an ultra nerd, and Diablo is an incredible series. Like, it has seasons, and essentially they just kept adding and adding to the game. There's loads to do here. You could spend, I'd say, you could probably do about 1,000 hours in this and still feel like you had some things to do. This is very traditional in my regards to what an ARPG looks like, and it's just a very good game. Loads of different classes. The Switch port was decent. You can have 4-player local co-op, runs at 60 frames per second. Like everything you would want, but having it on a Switch is pretty incredible. Now, I do want to mention at the same time as this, perhaps not in the same league, but a very similar style, is Darksiders Genesis. Now, it has the same perspective, but the difference here was it just made it a little bit too easy. And I know a lot of people may agree with that, and let me know down in the comments what you thought of it. So it's not necessarily featuring on this list, but it's getting an honourable mention.
Talking of those sort of games then, we have another that's quite similar in some respects, and that's Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. Again, has that top-down perspective, dungeon crawling to an extent, you know, in terms of the layout of the levels, not necessarily the locations. You build your team, obviously you unlock new characters, new superheroes as you go. As you level them up, you can assign new powers to them or put points into particular power-ups. Very good game. I've played about 10 hours of this one. I played the other two back in the day on the PS2, possibly, maybe the GameCube, it's a long time ago now, but well worth picking up if you can find it for a decent price. What I will say about over here, at least in England, it's quite hard to find. You don't see it very often out. I don't know what it's like in the rest of the world.
Next up then, we've got Dragon's Dogma, Dark Arisen, not Arisen as I said once and got smashed. Brilliant ARPG, but it does start to take on that more open world. I mean, look at it, it looks different, right? It's a very different looking game. It has incredible combat, this one. You can jump onto the monsters, climb up them and stab them. It was quite underrated. It originally came out back in the Xbox days, and then it didn't see a Western release for a long time. Everyone was asking for this and another one that's in this list. And yeah, I was so impressed with it. It runs well, it's got loads of questing, it's got an interesting system where you basically have these backup players called pawns. You're gonna have to spell that, Glenn.
Yeah, I seem to remember in your review you made some bizarre pawn. That's a very hard word to say when you're English, isn't it? They both sound the same. Pawn, W-N, pawn version of me, didn't you? If it was a porn version of me, that would have been horrendous.
I think I'm going to be sick. Let's move on.
Right, we're going to move into what we would class as open world ARPGs, maybe, now. And we're going to start with a big one, and that is, of course, Skyrim. Well, Skyrim has been on everything, everywhere, forever now, hasn't it? But it's still a fantastic game, and it's a very good port on the Switch, I would say.
Yeah, if I said to you Fuzro Dar, what would you say?
I'd say you've played more Skyrim than me.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, brilliant games, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of potential gameplay. You create different classes from different races. It does have everything that the traditional games have. It's just, like Glenn says, it takes on more of an open world style. So it starts to get into almost hybrid territory. These are absolute classics. We didn't include it in our last ARPG list and we got smashed for it. So, you know, power to the people.
Right, continuing on that theme, then the next one is Kingdoms of Amalur, which came out originally, I think, I am going from memory here, about 2012, give or take, and it was on the Xbox 360. So Mark, what do you want to say about this one?
Yeah, we recently reviewed this one on the channel. It's the one I was talking about when I spoke about Dragon's Dogma, and everyone was like, oh yeah, Dragon's Dogma is amazing, but I want Kingdoms of Amalur on the Switch. Glenn's giving me abuse here for some of my descriptive language skills, but it's very hot in this room, sat next to this 6'3" guy with a beard. But we're on Kingdoms of Amalur, which is a very traditional ARPG. Guess what's in it, Glenn?
Is it action, role-playing, it's a game? That's pretty much what you said just now.
You forgot questing. Never forget questing. Yeah, it's the most important part. But yeah, there's not much more you can say. It's very old school in its design. I don't know what to say about it. Combat's much less... what's the word? What's the word for Dragon's Dogma's combat? It actually reminds me a lot of the Lord of the Rings, yeah, in terms of its world and its design, and it has a lot of lore that you can find in it. So is that enough for you, or?
Well, if that's only been about 40 seconds for you, that's taken him about 20 minutes to come to that conclusion. Should we move on?
I think we should. All right. It's good to be back. And then we have Geralt of Rivia himself in The Witcher 3, which I know you played recently a little bit of.
I haven't played The Witcher, no, and I know that every time I say that on whatever video, people go, wow, you haven't played, but it's very hard to find for the Switch these days, and it's very expensive when you do find it, so it's one of those that I'm kind of just keep my eye out for, you know what it's like?
I'm a digital buyer, Glenn, you know, it's the way I roll. But yeah, actually, I was talking to Glenn before when we were playing golf. They don't need to know that, but they do now. That someone was saying about the Netflix series of The Witcher actually considering bringing a DLC across to The Witcher 3, which is really odd. How do you reckon that would work?
I don't know if it means in terms of, you know, the characters and the lore and them looking like, what's his name? Henry Cavill, yeah. I don't know, or whether it's a specific story point that's been in the series they're going to take over across, but it'd be interesting, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. You definitely should play this one, Glenn. It's actually got quite a monster hunting aspect to it. Like, a lot of the quests are based around hunting specific creatures, and then you have to track them. That's what I like. It has a bit of, you know, the old Batman games, where you could do the different senses to do like tracking and investigating. It actually included a lot of that, which I think is what kind of stood it above some of its other contemporaries. You got to remember as well, this list isn't in order of what we think's best, because personally, Witcher 3 for me is up there, I'd say, and this next one as well. And the final one we've got for you, it's The Outer Worlds. Have you played this one?
Yeah, I have played a little bit of this one, and it's funny again because when we were putting this list together and Mark suggested this one, straight away I said, no, it's way off. But when he described what it has in it, no, fair play, it has, hasn't it? It's got a lot of those traditional tropes, but it repackages it almost.
Yeah, these games, they've been running on the same engine for so long. The core gameplay, though, has been essentially untouched from the Fallout series. If you played New Vegas, it's designed by many of the same people. And Obsidian do the storytelling part really well and giving players loads of horrible decisions to make. They still do that with the Outer Worlds. It's a bit more tongue-in-cheek than the Fallout games. Yeah, like Glen says, not traditional, but you've still got your character designing, building, leveling, questing, everything that you'd expect in an ARPG, and that real-time combat, with not quite a VAT system, but a slowdown mechanic of sorts, which works really well. Yeah, I enjoyed these a lot, and they've been patched up immensely since they first came out. Any honourable mentions, Glen?
I wouldn't say honourable mentions as such. What I would say is games like Monster Hunter Rise and the Zelda games aren't on here because we don't consider them to our criteria ARPGs. I know there are many people that do, and if you did and if we did, they'd most certainly be on here, but that's why they aren't. But I think you do have a couple of honourable mentions, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. Again, like Glen says, it's difficult to class these ones, but things like Dark Souls, it kind of mixes genres. There's a few different elements. Dragon Quest Builders 2 is a really good one, but I haven't put enough time into it to feel confident to talk about it. Snack World, which I know you played.
Yeah, that's much more your traditional dungeon crawling, so that would qualify. I wouldn't say it's as good as some of these ones, but it's decent if you can find it for a cheap price.
Yeah, and then you've got other things like Titan Quest, classics like that, which could be on there. I know the Switch had a few glitches and things like that, but yeah, good games. So that's it essentially for our ARPG list. Pop down in the comments and let us know what your favourites are from this, or if we've missed any big ones. We're going to put links to the other video in this series so that you can potentially see if there are any over there that are in your list of best games. And I think that's it. It's nice to be back in person.
Yeah, definitely. Hope you enjoyed this one. As Mark said, stick any down below that we've missed. With the criteria you have that's so woolly, we're always going to miss some, but yeah, whack them down below. That would be good. Right, all that's left to say then is thank you to our Patreons, as always, for your continued support, and to each and every one of you, happy gaming.
For all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers, guys. See ya!